you control your identities, you control your risk. But if you don't control your identities, the attackers will do that for you.
Saba, it would be great for our audience if you could please introduce yourself and tell us what you do in your business.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marco, for having me. My name is Saba Bagheri, and I'm the Cyber Threat Intelligence Manager at Bupa APAC. I lead the CTI function here, where my role is to keep track of new cyber threats, understanding who the attackers are, how they work, what risk they pose to the business, and then I turn that intelligence into practical steps, whether that's supporting our detection teams, helping incident response, or keeping our leaders informed about emerging risk. And a little about my background. I have worked in technology and cybersecurity for over 15 years. I began my career in software development before transitioning into cybersecurity about a decade ago. Since then, I have held different roles across security operations, risk management, cybersecurity research, and of course, threat intelligence. And just to note, everything I'm going to share today just reflects my personal views and experience, and it doesn't represent Bupa's official position or processes.
Of course. Excellent. No, thank you. Thank you very much. Just for our viewers, Saba has a PhD in, I think it's cybersecurity, isn't it?
Yeah,
so from both
cybersecurity
academic and
resilience.
industry perspective,
Yeah.
I'm very excited to hear
Thank you so
your
much.
view, and I'm sure our viewers will enjoy this conversation. Saba, could you tell us a bit about what does identity security mean in the context of your line of business?
Yeah. So, Marcus, identity security really comes down for us to make sure that the right people have the right level of access at the right time and keeping everyone else out. Because these days, um, talking from intelligence point of view, attackers don't always bother breaking through the network perimeter. More often, they go after the easier path, which is stealing usernames, passwords, or token. And once they have that information, it can open the door to fraud, data theft, and or even a ransomware attack. These days, we have seen plenty of real examples of this. In some cases, attackers have simply both stolen credentials from underground and markets, dark web forums, and use them to log directly into corporate VPNs or cloud platforms. And there were some other cases where ransomware groups have managed to compromise privileged accounts like admin level accounts and then use those to disable security tools before launching their malware. So when we talk about identity security in industries like finance and healthcare, it means having a strong controls in place, something like multi-factor authentication as a baseline, a strict guardrails around privileged accounts, and ongoing monitoring to see if credentials are being leaked or traded online. Because in our industry, it's just a single compromised account can have massive consequences.
100%, 100%, and you're absolutely right. Yes, it's always easy to go and grab something that's available rather than go through the whole round of exploitation or whatever.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, if you don't mind, tell us a bit more about the impact of having that intelligence view and risk visibility in obviously in your line of business. In terms of managing the exposures, identity exposures proactively, but also managing more effectively to have that upper hand, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. So intelligence actually means that we need to be proactive. So what we do is we actually look at what is going on outside and see what it may mean for our business. And in terms of identity, what is important for us, we usually actually, the first thing that we usually need to know is what are those credentials which are being leaked in the dark forum, and if that's related to our organization, and then we need to immediately take action before more attackers start utilizing them. But also we need to make sure that we know about what a specific identity based attacks can be utilized by attackers, because there are a lot of kind of attackers pathways out there, but we need to make sure that we are prioritizing those based on the intelligence data. So basically, the intelligence helps identity team specifically to prioritize different attacks, because we cannot actually apply controls for everything at once. We need to be able to prioritize. So what we basically do, we actually categorize those attack paths based on what is more predominant in the industry, and then what we do, we actually grab those information and make sure that those specific controls are prioritized in our environment. So it's just making sure that we prioritize the right control and we cover those stuff before it is really materialized in our environment.
It's very interesting. So pretty much what you guys doing is you're building a profile of your attackers through
Mm,
whether threat modeling or whatever methodologies that you're using. Understanding those techniques and tactics, you try to see whether there is control gaps internal mapped to what happened.
yeah.
That's very interesting. What do you think? Obviously we all have it. All businesses have legacy systems. There's those dark corners with server 2012, or I don't know, God forbid, 2008 or 3, la 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 la. But how do you think having that risk visibility can help to proactively mitigate the risk in terms of these legacy
Mhm.
systems, especially in a hybrid IT environments where there is, let's say, Active Directory on-prem and then hybrid with Entra ID?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because legacy systems, both legacy system and hybrid environment, definitely makes everything very complicated, because you know that a lot of these older systems just weren't designed with modern threats in mind. And take older applications, for example, many of them don't support multi-factor authentication or modern identity standards. So you're either stuck building custom workarounds or accepting a higher level of risk. And then when you add hybrid IT into the mix, like running both cloud and on-prem, you often end up with multiple identity stores and different access methods, which makes it very hard to have a single clear view of who is logging in, or what's happening really, and it creates more opportunities for attacker to find a gap. Um, and as you mentioned, visibility would be a challenge, because in modern cloud platforms, you get rich logs and alerts, so it's easier to spot unusual activity. But with legacy system, the logging is much more limited, which means suspicious behavior can remain undetected. So overall, when we talk about this legacy infrastructure and hybrid environment, it should be a balancing act, because you cannot just switch off legacy system overnight. The business still depends on them. But at the same time, you cannot ignore the risk. That's why many organizations focusing on layering in compensating controls and using threat intelligence to understand which weaknesses attackers are most likely to go after first, which I mentioned. That's where you can actually start utilizing threat intelligence data and then prioritize your mitigation strategies.
100%. Yeah, totally agree with that. Um, I'm sure you agree. Budget is always an issue in many companies. There's always a battle to get a little bit more budget and attend to areas that they see there are gaps. So, what do you think, Saba, worked well in your line of business, but whether it's technology, people, process, all in all, and I'm sure there are some really great work has been done. Something that perhaps our viewer can take as a lesson and maybe apply it.
Yeah.
Obviously, beside the millions of budgets that they need, but yeah, what worked
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. So you actually mentioned about technical controls probably. I could actually say that when if we want to talk about technical controls, uh, I would say if we want to actually really reduce the risk of identity related threats, multi-factor authentication is probably the single biggest win, because when you roll it out everywhere, and specifically when you combine it with conditional access, like only allowing logins from trusted devices or certain location, you immediately cut down on a huge number of credential theft attack that I mentioned that you usually see in the dark web. So it's one of those controls that just quietly takes a lot of noise out of the environment. Then another thing when it comes to technical controls would be privileged access management. Because admin accounts are always the biggest target. So the less time they exist, the safer you are. Just in time access, for example, when people only get admin rights for a short period of time while you're doing a specific task, and then those rights are automatically removed. This is just being a game changer, I would say. It means that there aren't permanent admin accounts sitting around waiting for attackers to exploit. And then you also mentioned about probably process. Uh, Obviously, on the process side, regular access reviews is very, very important. They are hugely valuable because you can sometimes go through some accounts that people no longer really need. And those accounts, if you remove those accounts, that reduces the attack surface. And also, you would be surprised how often attackers use those old forgotten accounts as their entry point. And then again, it comes back to the people side. I would say at the people side, I think the collaboration between the identity team, the core security operation team, and also threat intelligence team is very, very important. Just one example, when the intelligence team spots new attack tactic, like push notification abuse or fresh phishing campaigns, they can feed that information to the identity team right away. Then policies or monitoring can be adjusted quickly. And that way, we are not just throwing controls out there blindly. We are actually shaping our defenses based on what attackers are really doing. I think that combination, technical controls, a structured process, and close teamwork is what makes identity security really work in practice.
You positioned it very well. I think yeah, and it looks like by the sound of it, it doesn't really need a massive amount of budget. It's just about risk-based approach
Yes.
of the budgeting to understand where are the gaps and
Yeah.
allocate in the right way. My next question would be around AI is a buzzword nowadays, and everyone talking about AI. You have that risk visibility not just on what is happening inside your business and company, but also what's happening externally from threat actors' perspective and their advancements. Where do you think this is going?
Yeah, so AI is such a hot topic these days, you know that. And in the future, obviously, is going to also play a big role on both sides. attackers are already starting to use it to make their phishing campaigns, social engineering attempts far more convincing and scalable. We actually saw cases in threat intelligence, Marco, that even kids, even very young individuals started utilizing very cheap AI driven solution, or, for example, ready to use phishing kits available to run phishing campaign or do social engineering work. So it's different. The threat landscape is really different these days. But at the same time, defenders are using AI as well to pick up on suspicious behavior, like you can spot login patterns that don't look normal, or flagging risky access attempts, and some other stuff that it is obvious that is not being done by a human. So it's a bit faster in terms of our incident response. So AI is really going to raise this stakes on both ends. I would say it's going to be a challenge for both attackers and also defenders, because for defenders you need to actually combat those new attackers coming to the market. Now we see unskilled individuals are joining skilled individuals to target organization, but at the same time defenders are also getting stronger and stronger. I would say AI would a lot change the threat landscape, and we need to be ready for the new threats coming to us. But the good thing is that our defense solution are also strong using AI tools.
What would be your advice for your peers in the same industry, in finance industry? What would be your advice for them in terms of all of what we discussed, from threat intelligence, risk visibility, from identity security, and yeah, all of what we discussed?
Yeah, so my advice would be to focus on the attacks that are really happening right now, instead of trying to cover everything at once. A lot of time, Marco, we see organizations just looking at shiny, fancy new tools and solutions. But the reality is most breaches still start in very basic ways, like the way that a scattered spider targeted many organizations by just simple social engineering techniques. They try to actually call IT help desk and pretend to be employees. So it's kind of different threat landscape nowadays. So in terms of identity space, if I want to actually call out one basic solution, again, I would say multi-factor authentication. It really has to be non-negotiable at this point. We still see cases where attackers walk straight in with nothing more than a stolen username and password. And in several ransomware incidents, the initial entry point was just that one compromised account with no MFA. And that's such a simple thing to prevent. And the next one obviously would be human angle, which we sometimes forget, because technical controls are really good, but attackers are still picking up the phone. Again, a scatter spider, shiny hunters, and they try to trick help desk into resetting accounts or creating a new one, or the cases that we saw in Salesforce attack. So the final point would be threat intelligence, my area, because the reality is that, again, you cannot fix everything at once. And obviously, when it comes to identity systems are complex. But if you know which attackers are trending, what are their TTPs, whether that's OS token abuse method they are using, or credential phishing, or push-based MFA attack they are using, you can direct your resources to the risk that are most likely to hit you. And at the end of the day, identity really has become the modern perimeter these days, because if you secure it with strong authentication, tight controls, or admin rights, or resilience processes, you can close off some of the fastest and most damaging paths attackers are using right now. And I would say, if you control your identities, you control your risk. But if you don't control your identities, the attacker will do that for you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that last part. Saba, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate all your insights. I'm hoping our viewers also enjoyed this conversation and can take some takeaways and perhaps apply it in their line of business. Thank you very much. You have a good day.
Thank you, Marco. Thanks for having me. Bye.